Coffee with a Go-Getter. That's where we get to speak and chat with people that have accomplished so much in their life or are still working towards accomplishing the goals that will lead them to the ideal life they've envisioned. We get to learn about their origin stories, lessons that they have learned along the way, and also the blueprints that others like us can follow. I'm your host, Ruth Biza. So my guest today is a serial entrepreneur who started his first business when he was just 9 years old back in his hometown, Zimbabwe. He moved to the US for college with only $40 in his pocket and has been able to use that to transform his life. He is an author of the book S.P.E.A.R Method, a TedX speaker, and currently also the co-founder and CMO of Unbelievable, a mission-based baked goods company, and they donate a meal for every cookie that is sold. And this company is backed by Tony Robbins, Ideal Lab New York, and Lope NYC. Now, he is also the co-founder of ThisIsMyEra, a personal development brand, and Signables, a sports collectibles brand. But most importantly, he has a heart for giving, and he founded the Amani Hope Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and their mission is to provide scholarships for underprivileged children. But very, very importantly, this guest today happens to be my husband. Take a look at this.
This morning, I had a feeling that tonight was going to be a good night. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome the Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, family, friends, and fellow students. First, let me take the opportunity to express my deepest gratitude for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I would also like to thank my professors, my friends, the entire Lynn community, and last but not least, my family in Zimbabwe, who are not here to share this special moment with me. The day that many of us have anxiously waited for has arrived. Congratulations to the class of 2010. Standing here this evening, it seems like yesterday that my father and I were discussing possible scenarios as to how my Lynn journey would end. I remember my father's words vividly. He said, "Education is a process of transformation, and by the time you're done, you'll be a new and improved man."
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am excited and I cannot wait to introduce our guest today. Please help me welcome Kuda Biza. Hey, Kuda, thank you so much for joining us today on Coffee with a Go-Getter. It is such a privilege for me to have you on here and also for everybody else listening, because I believe there's so much that, you have to offer and you have to share. So thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that you should have mentioned in your intro is that I'm a rule breaker. So since I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm going to be having a protein shake with a Go-Getter. So thank you so much for inviting me. I love the platform that you've created in the This Is My Era community, and I am excited and thrilled to be a guest.
Well, that's fantastic. So first things first, rule breakers are the ways of life, right? You're a trendsetter. So it doesn't have to be coffee. It's your favorite beverage. And right, we know that it is a protein shake. So that's good. So let's jump into it real quick. Who is Kuda? Like, people want to find out, okay, who are you?
Well, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm an entrepreneur, an author, a TedX speaker. I have so many hats that I wear in any given day, like everybody else. And also I'm a philanthropist. I love to give back. You shared my wonderful bio of some of the things that I've done so far. Which is great, but I think the biggest thing that I identify myself as is I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. So there's so many that come with me, and I'm really happy and glad to have been able to impact lives the way that I've impacted. But yeah, I think what you've shared about the businesses that I've started, the Amani Hope Foundation that I also started, where we're educating kids in Africa. Those are things that I primarily spend my time focusing on. But I'm also very thrilled to fill the role of being obviously your husband, and getting to experience life with you.
All right, brownie points there. All right, so definitely, like you said, it sounds to me, we did the intro, it sounds to me you've accomplished so much in your life. So let's start off by diving a little bit into, the different aspects of who you are and the journey that you're on and what has brought you here right now. So where I want to start, and I think where a lot of people want to start, is right here. Take a look.
This is my era. And in my era, everybody dances. I'm African. And we Africans love to dance. So when MCN called and were like, Kuda, come speak at the conference, I thought, of course. I'll get up on that stage because there's dancing and a microphone involved. And with this microphone, I can get to tell stories. You see, the best part about being African, aside from the dancing, is the storytelling. That age-old oral tradition of passing down wisdom from one generation to the next, one culture to the next, and from one person to the next. That's what life is all about. You hear a track like that, Oliver Twist by D'banj, and one can't help but dance. However, what many of you might not know is the story behind the beat, the life behind the artist. And when you get to hear some of these stories, you get to dance even more.
All right, Kuda. Okay, so I want to know, and I think a lot of our listeners also want to know, this is my era. How did a speech like that turn into a brand that is now really empowering others to reach their fullest potential?
Yeah, so, in 2014, I was invited to go speak at the Millennial Campus Conference. And I was really talking about some of the things that I've achieved at that point, right? I'd started AFR clothing with $150 while I was in my dorm room. And that brand had been able to impact so many lives in Africa, because we had a give back program where we would donate 20% of our profits to educate kids in Africa. So the idea was for me to go to this conference and really just share that story and inspire the young students that were in the crowd, so that they shouldn't wait until they quote unquote make it, but they can actually start making a difference now. And I define now as no opportunity wasted. So as I was thinking about the message I could share with them, the message that just came to mind was, this is my era, right? And what is an era? Well, an era is a period in time, right? You hear people say the Victorian era or the Martin Luther King era. It's a period of time where someone does something to define that era. And in my perspective, I always think about, what can I do while I'm still on earth that can impact the people around me or the people within my network, so that they call it the Kuda era. And I just wanted to create a speech that will then just galvanize everybody, so that they walk out there thinking about how can they make it their era. And the title for the speech had really come from a conversation I had with my friend Alexander S.P.E.A.R, because he had a song called This Is My Era that he hadn't released then. So I was like, hey, let me title this song, right? And let me title the speech, sorry, right? And then, I'll go deliver the speech, and we'll surprise everybody with a performance. And he was hiding in the crowd with his microphone with a DJ on stage. And when I finished my speech, Alexander S.P.E.A.R came and did his thing. But what happened afterwards is what then led to us creating the brand. Like, I've never shaken so many hands in my life. Like, when we left stage, everybody was coming and saying like, hey, Kuda, I want to make it my era, but I don't know how. Hey, Kuda, I want to make it my era, but I don't know how. And it just turned out like so many people that I spoke to that day
Mm-hmm.
were just basically, sharing that they want to make it their era, but they needed a guide, they needed a tool, they needed something to guide them to make it their era. And what happened after that was we started being invited to go to different places to go present. So we went to George Washington in Washington, D.C., and we did a presentation there. Harvard College invited us, and we went to Harvard and we presented at Harvard. We were invited in Canada, and we did a Canadian tour where we went to 4 institutions. We went to the UK, and we toured the UK. And same thing, like clockwork. Right after the presentation, I would do my speech. Alexander Starr would
Mm-hmm.
perform, and people from all these different schools and different geographies would all come and say, I want to make it my era, but I don't know how to make it my era. So in thinking about how can I help answer this question, a light bulb moment hit, which was like, hey, if we were to create a planner, right, where people can then write their goals, their dreams, their visions, all the things that they want to achieve,
Mm-hmm.
but then have a step-by-step process to really help them break those big, hairy, audacious goals into 90-day sprint milestones, it will
Mm-hmm.
then enable them to actually make it their era. So that's really how kind of like the process started. And I was stuck, as you know, with kind of like designing the product, and I enlisted a really talented person to help me design the planner, which is you, Ruth. And we worked on it for 90 days or so, tweaking it. I remember the days where we were working on it in Excel, and then we
Yeah.
found a designer all the way in Ukraine, and we're waking up at weird hours so that we could talk to him on Skype and work on the design. And before you know it, we had a product, and that's how the This Is My Era brand was started. And I'm so proud with what this brand has been able to achieve so far. We've touched the lives of tens of thousands of people in
Mm-hmm.
so many different parts of the world. So that speech turned into a life-changing movement.
Yeah, I do remember, yes, the Excel days where we would outline it and figure out, okay, this just doesn't look right. But obviously, we're not experts in everything, so it's good that we finally found a designer to really help us and get us to that level and to where This Is My Era is now. So it's so wonderful to be part of something from start or from ideation, right? So till it's out in the market and people are getting transformed and using it. So speaking of transformation, because there are so many planners or there's so many personal development brands out there, but a lot of the times, so what is it about the This Is My Era brand that you feel, okay, sets it apart from other 90-day planners?
Well, I think it's many things, really. And I would also be curious in hearing from our customers, because I think at the end of the day, our customers are the true litmus test in telling us what differentiates us. But, from my own, biased view, I think a couple of things differentiate us from it. So the first thing is the process. We just have a different process in the articulation of how people should write their goals, because that in itself is a very crucial step, right? So think about it. If you say, I want to make more money or I want to lose weight, and you're setting that as a goal, there's lack of clarity in that goal that you're destined to fail. Like,
Mm, mm,
you know if if you want to see someone write their goals, because what goals do is they set a standard, and they also set kind of like
mm,
a destination as to where you want to go. If you
mhm.
go if you board a bus going nowhere, you're just gonna end somewhere, right? You don't know where you're gonna go, right? Because you went on a bus
Yeah.
and you didn't know where the bus was going. So ideally what you want to do is you want to start by articulating the goal with clarity, so that you know that, hey,
Mm,
these are the specific, measurable, attainable results that I want to achieve in a set amount of time. So by adopting that model, it's one thing that really sets us apart. And then the second thing that I think has really helped the brand really is the community, which is the goal-getter community that we've been able to build. And we've been able to cultivate a really good culture. Some people, I actually see them as like friends, and we've been able to meet some of them, in life, and some have become more than just friends. So it's super exciting to see how the journey has evolved with the planner over the past 4 years. And then I think the other thing that really differentiates us as a brand, as well as a product, is our ability to be nimble and to shift with time. So what do I mean by that? We heard that a lot of people wanted something new, something different, and we launched our spiral bound planner because they wanted to be able to have the flexibility to really open it and write. So as a brand, I feel you need to always be adopting social listening, where you're listening to what your customers are saying, because that's how you get to grow and improve. And we have a few other things in the works that we're going to be launching in the next few months that I'm really excited about, where we're now really starting to go into specific niches, right? Because with the 90-day planner, it's really focused around all areas of life. But now we're going in a direction where we're going to zone in on one area and really go deep. So it's shifting the strategy a little bit from going, a mile wide and an inch deep. What we want to do now is want to go an inch wide but a mile deep with some of the products that we're going to launch. And the first one on our roadmap is a finance/budget planner that we're putting together, and it's going to be out hopefully within the next few months.
Yes, and let's not forget too the impact that is associated with what we're doing with This Is My Era, where for every planner that is purchased, we have partnered with World Vision, and we provide funds towards the education of kids in need. So that is so incredible. Now, outside of This Is My Era, we also know that you've created other really, really fascinating brands. And one of the ones that I find more fascinating and keeps evolving over time, and it's so incredible to watch, is this one. And I think a lot of people will be excited to hear more about this brand, how it came about and where you're going, and also obviously always the impact that is associated with it. So let's take a look at this one. Kuda, tell us a little bit more about what I just showed, which was a slideshow or different images of the brand that you co-founded and are also currently the CMO, Non-Believable.
Yeah, so Non-Believable is, as people might know, it's a mission-based cookie company. So we donate a meal for every cookie that we sell, which is bold in itself, right? Like for every cookie we're selling, we're donating a meal to feed someone in need. So as you're eating a cookie, someone is having a meal. And it really came from the whole notion of like, how can we create a purpose-driven brand in kind of like the world, where sometimes profits are leading, ventures. We decided to obviously lead with our purpose. And this was an idea that came from Tony Robbins after he had bumped into a group of nuns that were being evicted. And he decided to help them, and he learned how they were supporting people through their soup kitchen, and the inspiration to start Non-Believable came. And for me at the time, I was actually working in corporate America. I was leading an $80 million e-commerce division, and I got a call. And the call was like, hey, Tony and Michael Loeb, they want to start a cookie brand, but they don't really know how to do it. You might be the guy to take this, crude concept that's in their head and really turn it into a business. And when I went and I listened into the opportunity, I knew immediately that this was something that I had to do for a couple of reasons. Number one, when I was growing up in Zimbabwe, we experienced a very, very difficult drought. It was actually named the most worst drought in sub-Saharan Africa by New York Times. And at the time, my father was part of the food relief efforts. And he would go out into the field distributing food, and he would come back and he would tell me these stories. So he would tell me stories like, hey, we got to this remote village and we went to this homestead, and they were crying, and they were crying because their 4-year-old son died, of hunger. He starved to death. We were like a day late. If we had gotten there like the day before, we could have saved him. Or sometimes they would share, he would share like, good stories like, oh my God, we got there right in the nick of time and were able to save an entire village. So for me, hunger will always be something that's personal to me because of what I experienced when I was growing up in Zimbabwe. So when the idea was being discussed, I was like, wow, this is a way where I can follow in my father's footsteps. But although he was doing it more through the nonprofit lens, I'll do it through the entrepreneurial lens, where we create a business, we create value in the marketplace, we partner up with our customers to help make a difference. So that really resonated with me, and I quit my job at this high-paying Fortune 500 company, and I decided to dive into the entrepreneurial startup world to start Unbelievable. And it's been an amazing journey. We've been in market for slightly over a year. We've distributed more than 300,000 meals to people in need. And when you think about the timeliness of this business, right? We launched a couple of months before COVID, and then COVID hit, everything gets shut down, which actually means that the need for meals actually increased, right? Because people were losing their jobs. Kids who would get the most nutritious meal at school were now stuck at home where they don't have that meal through their school meal programs. So we were able to really launch our business at the right time. And we're super happy to have been able to impact the number of people that we've impacted through our impact partners like Feeding America, World Vision, New York City Relief.
Yeah. Well, that is incredible. And I just love to hear how personal businesses are, especially with this one, with hunger being such a personal issue. I think it puts a different kind of drive in you to really want to continue to build this. So you had mentioned about being in corporate America and then having to leave corporate America to start this business. For anybody that's listening right now that is thinking about, starting something else, but they have that fear of leaving the security that they have right now, what would you say to them? And also, did you even have any fears or reservations about leaving something that you were so secure in, you were making good money, living comfortably, but then having to leave it to do a startup, which is not easy?
Yeah, so what I would tell the people who are thinking about leaving is I'll tell them to read this book, The S.P.E.A.R method. In that book, I really talk about how to achieve balance, success, and fulfillment. So in my case, it was more for fulfillment thing, right? Because I had spent over a decade in corporate America, generated, millions of dollars in both sales and profit for this big corporation. And I really knew how to start businesses from scratch and turn them into multi-million-dollar businesses, which I had done while I was there. And also manage and lead big, existing businesses. So I knew I had the skill sets to launch Unbelievable because I had done it before. A particular example I can share is I launched a meal delivery system under the Crock-Pot brand called Crock-Pot Cuisine. And, that was literally like my first real project when I got hired out of college. I created this business that didn't exist. It was a food business. Grew it, scaled it to over $20 million in revenue in less than 3 years. And it was a beautiful story. But when I thought about the success we made with Crock-Pot Cuisine and the fulfillment I got from that project, it was a little bit of like night and day, right? Because generated millions and millions of dollars in profit and sales, but I didn't really make an impact, which for me, if you look into the businesses that I've started, right, I always have a social mission tied to it, except the ones that I started in corporate America. So when I was in college, when I started A.F.R. Clothing, which was a t-shirt company that I started in my dorm room, like I mentioned, it had a social impact element to it. If you look into This Is My Era, with a social impact element to it. And then I went to corporate America and I was creating these big businesses with these big brands, with all these big budgets, generating, these big profits, but I wasn't fulfilled. So what I would tell people to do is you just need to really learn about the S.P.E.A.R method, which I'll share in a little bit, which is the first step is seek your purpose. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you know your life's purpose, your life's calling, what you're put on earth to do, right? You will then not have any fear moving in your purpose, because if you move in your purpose, it's certain that you're gonna at some point get to the intersection where you achieve success and fulfillment. So
Yeah.
that will be the first thing that I'll do. And I think I somewhat answered your question about was I fearful? To be honest, I wasn't, but I understood the risk, right? Because with any startup, there's risk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's an idea. You don't know if it's going to work or not. You don't know how the market is going to respond, or
Mm-hmm.
like as you're doing product development, like there's so many risks associated to it. So I understood the risks, and we're still a startup and we're still growing. But for me, that's what actually gives me excitement, because I am creating something. And as an entrepreneur, I think the true definition of an entrepreneur is that you're a problem solver. So you should not be fearful, experiencing problems, because the gift that you have as an entrepreneur is to actually solve those problems, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
the way I look at it. And the last thing I'll also share is that growth only comes outside of your comfort zone. And this was
Mm.
a topic that I shared in a TEDx. And when you find yourself in situations where your goal or you have opportunities that scare you, those are
Yeah.
the opportunities, those are the goals that you should actually chase for, because
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones that are gonna expand you. They're gonna drive you to grow as an individual, and
Yeah.
and your contribution to the world will become more and more valuable. But the key thing you need to do is you need to take action, right? Because
Oh yeah.
if you go into the opportunity and then you don't execute, then that fear of the inevitable of failure that you were fearing before becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So it sounds to me, though, there was a little bit of, obviously there's always a little bit of risk in anything that we want to do, but if you are passionate about it enough and if you know your purpose behind it, then every decision that you make after that, won't be as risky, because then you know where you're headed in a sense, and you're passionate about it and driven towards that purpose. So that's really
Yeah,
good.
and the other thing too I'll share, Ruth, is that there's also risk in not taking that opportunity. Because let's say I could have
Mm,
stayed in, in, in,
yeah.
in corporate America. People like to say the comforts of corporate America. What if you get fired? What if they get
Mm,
acquired and something happens? When I
yeah.
was in corporate America, we got acquired and some people got laid off. So it's kind of like a false sense of safety net or
Security.
sense of
Yeah.
security.
Mm,
But the true reality is, in life, you really want to be in control. And if you're an entrepreneur, that's you're in control. Like, your job doesn't depend on does your boss like you or whatever,
mm,
or you can decide to give yourself a raise every single day by just executing and delivering more value into the marketplace. Whereas if you do it in a corporate setting, yes,
mm-hmm,
you're delivering a lot of value and you're executing, but it's up to someone else to decide if
mm,
you deserve a raise or not. So if you then think about it, probably there's actually more risk. There was more risk in me staying in corporate America than in me becoming an entrepreneur.
yeah, yeah. That is so good. That is so true. So then this is a perfect segue into the next one, because I was actually gonna talk to you, or a little bit, ask you, because you mentioned the S.P.E.A.R method, which is the book that you just shared right here. And a lot of people that haven't read it yet, I absolutely recommend you reading this book immediately, because one of the things that you did mention, that it helps you kind of manage the risk or the fear associated with wanting to jump into something new. But I would love to hear, like, why write a book? Because from what I've learned, a lot goes into it. There's so much that goes into it. But why did you feel like you needed to write this book?
Why not? Why not write a book? I mean, a book is the new business card nowadays. No, I'm just
Mm.
kidding. For me, it was more around sharing with people what I had discovered.
Mhm.
So a few years ago, my sister passed away, and it was so unexpected, right? She
Mhm.
wasn't sick or anything like that. Just a dog with rabies just attacked her, bit her, and she died. And I remember when I was in Zimbabwe, I was just asking myself questions like, was she happy? Was she fulfilled? Right? Was she
Mm.
able to find and pursue her life purpose? And those types of really deep questions. And what I wanted to do at that time was to actually shift my life and make sure that I find my purpose, my calling, and I spend whatever time left that I have on earth pursuing that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was still in corporate America at the time. And, in corporate America, the culture is okay, you know, did you hit your number, your target? Are you getting a
Mhm.
bonus? Are you going to get promoted and all that stuff? So I felt like although I was successful in
Yeah.
corporate America, I didn't really have a sense of purpose, calling, and
Mm.
fulfillment. So what I wanted to do was really figure out how could someone actually achieve both, because I think we live in a culture where you have like people who kind of like are just kind of like, oh, it's all about fulfillment, they don't care about success, they just go with the flow. And then you have the other side where it's like, hey, success, 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 work so hard, work so hard, work so hard, don't do the things that give you fulfillment, just focus on working and working and working.
Yeah.
But I was like, hey, what if you can actually balance the two, where
Mhm.
you can be both successful and fulfilled, right?
Mhm.
And I went on this journey and really trying to understand how do you balance the two, because I just don't want to be like super successful, right? So because what's the point of being a miserable billionaire, right? You have all the materialistic success out
Yeah.
there, but deep inside you're not happy. Or
Mm.
what's the point of you also being happy, but you're poor and you can't contribute, you can't look after your family, you can't pay your
Mm.
bills, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I went on this journey. I interviewed, self-made millionaires. I interviewed professional athletes, people who had been dealt with life's hand that are so difficult. Like, for example, Sean Callaghy. He was born with this disease where he's losing his eyesight. He's now basically legally blind. But if you meet Sean, he's super happy. He's doing things that are challenging him, and even though he's blind, is like scuba diving, is doing all these different things. He's also impacting so many lives through his unblinded movement.
Mhm.
And yet, you know, it could have been very easy for him to be depressed and really focus on
Yeah.
why me, like why
Yeah.
am I like going blind, why can't I see my kids, and so forth and so forth. But he's been able to really go against that, and just focus on abundance and giving back and contribution. So I interviewed a lot of people like them, and what I realized through these interviews is that there was a framework, which is the SPEAR method, right?
Mhm.
And the framework really is: seek your purpose, because once you know your purpose, you want to come up with a plan, which is
Mhm.
P. And the idea is, once you know your purpose, you come up with a plan, you execute, which is E. Because what's the point of seeking your purpose and coming up with a plan, but you then shelf the plan and actually don't take any action? And then
Right.
once you execute, you're going to achieve something, right? So it could be
Mhm.
100% of that specific milestone in pursuit of your purpose, or it could be 10%, whatever. But you have these micro milestones that you need to hit in your pursuit for your life's purpose. And by just repeating that process, which is R, the last one, you'll be able to actually become successful and achieve fulfillment. So the book really was birthed because of the tragic situation that happened to my sister. But through that tragic event, an amazing book has been gifted to the world.
Yeah. That's so good, and it reminds me of the saying that No, life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. So even though this was a tragic situation, out of that situation, you were able to go on a journey that brought you this framework that ultimately is not just helping you, but it's helping lots and lots of people that are reading this book, or people that are going to read this book now that they're hearing about it. So that is incredible. Thank you for sharing that bit. So on the, because right now people are seeing, yeah, you know, non-believable, this is my era, S.P.E.A.R method, TED Talk, all these successes where it's like, whoa, you know, what can't this person do? Are there businesses or events that have not been as successful? Have you had that, you know, setback where you're like, yeah, this one is not it, and you know, it just didn't work out?
Yeah, well, for those people who are just maybe focusing on the successes, because obviously I think those are the ones that get the most energy. I've been around a lot of highly successful people, and what I've noticed, which is also consistent with me, is that highly successful people are also the people who failed a lot. Like they have more failures than successes. So you look at people like Richard Branson and whatnot, they have failed at more things than the things that they've actually succeeded. What's really, really different is the way, you know, perhaps we look at failure. I honestly don't consider anything a failure. I consider it as a learning experience, because you look at a guy like Thomas Edison, right? You know, if he had given up on the 900, like on the 9,999th attempt to figure out how to get, you know, a light bulb to work, we wouldn't have light right now, right? But he just
Yeah.
kept on learning and saying like, okay, this is not the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. Until he finally got the light bulb to work. So I think it's really just a matter of perspective, right? Which is, you know, people only get to see a glimpse of the things that, you know, that's shared out there, and usually it's the successes, but the
Yeah.
things that we're working on that probably don't even end up seeing the light of day. You know, it's for us, for me specifically, I take it as learning experiences. So yes, there's so many failures that I've experienced in life. So, you know, if you want business examples, I'll share a couple. So when I was in corporate America, you know, I told you that I was part of a group where the mandate, we were supposed to launch new businesses into the market. We launched 4 businesses into the market. One of it was Crockpot Cuisine. Another one, it was a partnership with Anheuser-Busch called Draftmark Tap System, and a few others. Those were the successes, but we evaluated over 40 ideas, right? And out of those 40 ideas, only 10% actually got to market and actually got to, you know, generate revenue. 36 were failures or learning experience, so to say, where we would go into the business modeling, we would, you know, come up with a prototype, a concept, you have an MVP, take it to market, and then quickly learn like, okay, this is a dud and we'll kill it. So yes, there's many of those. I launched a supplement business with a business partner on Amazon, and it didn't really do well. We ended up pulling it down. We started, you and me, Ruth, we started a phone case business on
Yeah.
Amazon, and we got eaten alive by
Yep.
competitors, and we never talk about it or bring it up when we're out with friends, you know, talking about it. So I think, you know, one of the things
Yeah.
I like to tell people, which is kind of like a Spartan creed, is that those who sweat the most in training bleed less in war. And for any entrepreneur, if you really do want to be successful, you need to make sure that you're sweating a lot in training, meaning that you're trying so many things and some of those things are going to fail. But when you actually get into war, right, when your business is really like on top and you're generating revenue, you're growing your company, when
Yeah.
things are thrown at you, you're going to bleed less because you have those battle scars and you're ready, your mindset is ready to really take those things on. So view failures as learning experiences that then actually help you deal with bigger challenges down the road. So I actually embrace failure, and I love when I make mistakes because I learn. It's painful, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I do know that I'm growing from it. and I'll take that learning, and it's going to lead to success.
Yeah, that's good. So they're not failures, they're just lessons that are going to get you to that ultimate result that you're working towards. That's fantastic. So there's a lot that you've accomplished to say, right? Starting from age 9, starting your first business up until now. So when you look at everything that you've experienced, and this is like a two-part question because we can split it. What do you feel is the biggest accomplishment, let's say professional wise, and then your biggest accomplishment personally? Or you can just loop them all together and be like, what is like your biggest, you feel is the biggest accomplishment to date? Obviously, there's more to come. We definitely know you're going to achieve more. But what has happened right now? What do you feel is your biggest accomplishment?
So when I graduated, right, we went out to dinner, we celebrated, but do we still go out for dinner to celebrate my graduation that happened 11 years ago?
No.
So with accomplishments, what I do is if we accomplish something, tap myself on the back, good job, and then I look at the next thing. I don't really spend a lot of time dwelling on like, oh, 10 years ago, I created a company that generated $20 million in business. So I don't really like that question because I don't like to dwell on accomplishments. I like to focus on my goals, on the next thing that I'm going to accomplish. And you've shared my bio and people are listening, so I'll let the listeners take a pick which one they like. But my focus and energy is really focused on the next thing that I'm focused on achieving.
That's good. That's good. I like that. So you keep moving forward in a sense. So in terms of actually keeping like moving forward on things, what do you think, or what would you say has been the best advice you've received that has kept you moving forward, and who gave that advice to you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people give me a lot of advice, in person or through books and whatnot. I think the best advice I can say I've received is dream big, and this was given to me by Jeff Hoffman. For people who don't know Jeff Hoffman, you should thank him if you actually get to meet him. But he's the guy who invented the kiosks at the airports. So when you go to check in and you check in through a kiosk and you don't have to go into the long line to do it, Jeff Hoffman was the guy who did it. He was also one of the co-founders of Priceline.com. He's a super successful billionaire. He has an amazing story. But when I met with Jeff in Austin, Texas, and I was kind of like, telling him my story and like, hey, I want to be like you and, change the world the way you have. What piece of advice could you give me? He just like, touched me on the shoulder, looked me in the eye, and he was like, dream big. That was it. So I think I would like to build on Jeff's advice, which is don't just dream big, but you also want to act, right? Because if you have this big dream and you don't act, then it doesn't really help. So for me, I think that was kind of like the biggest advice, because I think sometimes in life we ourselves are our biggest enemy, because we allow things like, let's say, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and things like that to stop us from dreaming, right?
True.
And also actually taking the action we need to take to achieve our goals. And, we all have amazing gifts and things that we can achieve with so much tremendous potential, but it is only those who really harness that potential who actually go and achieve the great things.
Yeah. That is so good. That is so true. As simple as it sounds, it's so true. And I think as we get older too, we kind of lose that wonder of wanting to dream big and the possibilities of it. So it's good to be reminded about that. So one final question, which I think I might know, but I'm pretty sure our listeners want to know, is what do you do for fun? Because it's not just, work, serious, on point all the time. What does Kuda do for fun?
Yeah, so for our listeners, I work out, I watch a lot of sports. I'm a big Chelsea fan. I do a lot of things. But for you specifically, Ruth, Let's catch up tonight.
All right, well, that was fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Kuda. Now, for our listeners right now, how, if they wanted to, continue to learn more from you and get in contact with you, how can they do that?
They can just slide in my DMs. They can go on Instagram, Kuda Biza. So, at Kuda Biza, Kudabiza. They can then just follow me there and just send me a note. They can also go to SP.E.A.R.method.com. That's my personal website. And they can just go on the contact form and also just reach out to me there.
All right, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kuda, for taking time to be with us, sharing your life stories. And for our listeners, I hope you were able to get a little tidbit that you can apply into your life. Thank you for your time. I'm your host, Ruth, and I will see you on the next episode of Coffee with a Go-Getter. And remember, you are just one goal away.